And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us across the Louisiana plain, where we are busy each and every day, elevating the cause of constitutional conservatism, moving forward with confidence, relentlessness, and perseverance, and day by day, inch by inch, draining the vast Louisiana swamp. My name is Chris.
And I'm Danielle, and this is the State of Freedom, brought to you by freedom-loving Louisiana First Patriots. Well, hello, State of Freedom warriors. Thank you for having us along for the ride, part of your day. We're so thankful for you. We're so grateful for you. You are simply the best, and we're so thankful. We are only here, as you know, because of your encouragement, your prayers, your financial support, your friendship. If you are looking for a way to support us, to advertise with us, or to send us feedback, please visit our website at freedomstate.us. I also just want to mention up front here that if you love the scriptures of the day, if that's something that you enjoy and you like the devotion that goes along with it, those are now available on freedomstate.us. The whole archive of them since we started is available. So feel free to take a look there if you want to follow up on if you want to reread anything, or if you want to just follow along, you can do that there. And we would also really appreciate it if you'd help us get the word out and spread the reach of the State of Freedom. Keep liking the show on whatever platforms you listen to us, subscribe to it, and share short clips with your friends from our YouTube and Rumble channels. Those are always, links to those are always in the show notes and over on freedomstate.us. Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge Parish Chapter is dedicated to fighting for the survival of America by unifying, educating, and empowering parents to defend and take back their parental rights at all levels of government. To learn more or to get involved with Moms for Liberty East Baton Rouge, email momsforlibertybatonrouge@gmail.com. That's moms, the number 4, libertybatonrouge@gmail.com. The email address is on the Patriot page of our website, freedomstate.us, and it's in the show notes. Well, today we will be bringing you yet another epic recap of what happened last week and a preview of the week ahead. We don't think this one is going to be quite as hefty as some of the recent ones, so fingers crossed for that, but thank y'all for sticking with us. And let me read the scripture of the day. It is Luke chapter 24, verses 1 through 5. And this is the Sunday morning after Jesus' crucifixion. It says, "Very early that Sunday morning, the women made their way to the tomb, carrying the spices that they had prepared. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Joanna, and Jesus' mother Mary. Arriving at the tomb, they discovered that the huge stone covering the entrance had been rolled aside, so they went in to look. But the tomb was empty. The body of Jesus was gone. They stood there stunned and perplexed. Suddenly, 2 men appeared above them in dazzling white robes shining like lightning. Terrified, the women fell to the ground on their faces. The men in white said to them, 'Why would you look for the living one in a tomb? He's not here. He's risen.'" And as I was reading this, I just love it. What came to mind was how much I loved what Jerome Davidson said when he came on the show a few weeks ago. If you didn't catch that episode, that is a must listen. What an inspiration that guy is. And he said that he's one of those people who believes the Bible literally, and the stories recounted in the Bible, he really believes that they happened. And this is the most important story that the Bible tells of the resurrection of our Lord and Savior, Jesus. We are not like those who don't have hope. We serve a risen King. He took on all of our sin, our guilt, our sickness, disease, shame, and torment upon himself. He offered himself up as the perfect sacrifice for all of mankind, and he conquered it all. He poured out his perfect blood on the mercy seat and covered all of our sins so that we could become the righteousness of God. This is the most important place to participate in our own rescue. His sacrifice opened a door and made forgiveness possible. It made reconciliation possible with God. But we have to walk through it. We have to accept his offer of forgiveness and repentance of our sins. We have to believe that he did what the Bible said he did. And we have to confess that he is Lord of all. And most importantly, make him Lord in our own hearts. And when we do that, we will be ones found among the living and not the dead. We will be ones who've been made new and brought into new, sparkling life in Him.
As you were reading the scripture, one of the things that struck me, Danielle, was, and you're talking about how we have to believe what's written in the Bible. One of the things that makes me believe that that actually occurred, there are some people who say that the whole story of Jesus, the whole salvation story of Jesus, well, his resurrection, his resurrection, basically, all historians basically agree, any reputable historians, they all agree that Jesus lived, that he was crucified, that he died under Pontius Pilate. There's no question about the historical existence of Jesus, that he said the things that he said. The thing that they dispute, because really our entire salvation and the credibility of the whole gospel of Jesus Christ hinges upon the resurrection, whether or not he actually rose from the dead. And there's all kind of theories about whether or not that actually occurred. Some people say the apostles were hallucinating. Others say that there was just this big conspiracy going on. But one of the things that makes me believe that it occurred, as much, if not anything else, just from an evidentiary point of view as a lawyer. 2,000 years ago, unfortunately, sadly, women were given very, very little credibility. They were really not even allowed to testify in court. And if they did testify in court, they were not given the same weight of a man's testimony in court. So if you're trying to build a fraudulent conspiracy about a man who supposedly rose from the dead, would you create your narrative where the first people who found the tomb empty being three women, basically three peasant women? And so I find that so interesting. That tells me that it is true, certainly militates strongly against the idea that there was some conspiracy about whether Jesus rose from the dead. So that just came to my mind when you were talking about, as these three women went and found the empty tomb. But you're so right about the believing in the resurrection and believing in the sacrifice that Jesus made for us. And if we believe that, as we're called to believe, things all seem to fall in place and our whole lives change. I have found it, Danielle, as I've told you before, more difficult than you at times to sustain my belief. And I say that as a Christian who is committed and who loves the Lord. But I just want people listening to know that there may be times when you go through struggle and when you go through real doubt and real pain and real despair. All of the great followers of Jesus did. They said that Peter wept bitterly. And the scripture says he wept bitterly when the cock crowed the third time and he realized that he had openly betrayed his best friend and his Savior 3 times out of fear and cowardice. Judas went and hung himself after he betrayed Jesus. All of them abandoned him. So we're going to go through moments of doubt sometimes, but hang in there and be strong, because God is always close to us, even sometimes when he doesn't feel like he is. And I just felt called to say that tonight, because there may be people, Danielle, who are going through some real struggle and some real fear. And they might be right now, as David did in his moment of despair, in his moment of, of real suffering, when he said, "Have you abandoned me? Where are you? Where are you?" Job asked the same thing, "Where are you?" And as it turned out, God was right there with them. So just remember that sometimes when it may feel like he's the farthest away from us, that really is when he is the closest to us, and he's leading us to something that is more glorious, more efficacious, and more rewarding. So just hang in there and be faithful in your prayer and persevere, as St. Paul says.
Yeah, well said, Chris. And, you were talking about people who have betrayed Jesus and people who have abandoned Jesus. And the truth is, we all have. And the sin or the condemnation is not in walking away from Jesus. It's just in not coming back, right? Like, the separation happens when you don't come back. If you come back, you're back, and to your other point, it's not all about a feeling. Like any relationship is not all about a feeling. It's about devotion. It's about commitment. But but I do believe that God does a lot to remind us of his presence and to make his presence known. And that may look different for each of us. The way that he speaks to us at any given point in time may look different for each of us. From day to day, it could look different for any one of us. But just to have our eyes open to recognize his movements, his voice, his promptings, that's the most important thing, because that's what keeps us connected and lets us know that we're on the path or we're straying off the path, whatever it is, that he's with us and he's guiding us. So,
and he is, and he is always guiding us, and he's always with us. And St. Paul, Danielle, I know we're taking a little bit longer on the scripture tonight, but I just feel moved to do so because these things are kind of coming into my head. St. Paul, there was a thorn in St. Paul's side, as you well know, and we don't really know what it was, but it was a profound weakness. It was a torment that Paul had that he talks about, the thorn in his side, and he asked God to take it away from him. Please take this away from me. And the Lord, of course, said, my grace is sufficient for thee. So I'm not going to take away the thorn in your side, but I'm going to give you sufficient grace, abundant grace to transcend it, and ultimately really to be blessed by it. Sometimes God, he works in very, very mysterious ways, Danielle, very mysterious ways. But I just want to make it clear that to our listeners that the greatest followers of Jesus, from David to Noah, to Saul, to Solomon, to Peter, to Paul, and many more, to Moses, they all were flawed. They were all flawed men. They all failed, and they all committed acts that they were, I'm sure, ashamed of, not proud of. They all did things. But as you said, St. Paul said, why is it that I do what I would not do, and I don't do what I should do? Paul says that in a moment where he's confused about why he's doing things that he knows that he shouldn't be doing. And we don't really know what they are, but he's making it clear that, that he's not a perfect man, and that he's a flawed man. But as you said, Danielle, the thing that is the decisive factor is not that we fall away from God or that we make mistakes, but that we don't return. And I love your point about the importance of recognizing God's mercy and returning to him. And I just think that's very powerful.
Yeah. Well, his grace is sufficient, and he is leading us forward every day. And I'm so grateful for that, because we have navigated some choppy waters, Chris. And I'm sure there are some choppy waters ahead, but with his grace and his guidance and encouragement from the people that he puts in our path, we will make it. We will make it through. And I know and believe that we will not just make it through by, the whites of our knuckles or, our fingernails, but we will be victorious.
We will be victorious, and I will go through choppy waters with you, Danielle, any day of the week, as long as I get to sit in the back with a little suntan oil on and maybe drink a cold adult beverage. And if you could just paddle us along in the choppy waters, I'll be a friend of yours for life.
All right, Chris. Well, I will paddle us along right now. We have a really big week ahead, and I just want to go ahead and put out a call that if you can get to the Capitol on Tuesday is going to be a really massive day. There's so much legislation that's critically important that's happening on Tuesday. So it's kind of an all hands on deck day. And if you can make it there, by all means, please do. Just drop Chris a line at chris@lacag.org and let him know that you're planning to be there. And if you have a bill that we mentioned that's really important to you that you want to testify on, let him know that. If you have bills that probably all these bills are going to be of vital importance to you at some level or another. And so we want to make sure you put red cards in, green cards in as appropriate, and we will help you navigate that. And by we, I mean Chris, because he's going to be the one that's there. So he's volunteering for that.
Well, and keep in mind, but let's not self diminish your role on this, Danielle. You are in the command center, and the things that you are doing in the command center are far beyond my level of sophistication. So, you are absolutely essential. The only thing really that you have not done yet is actually get a control collar that you've implanted inside of my neck to just direct me around the Capitol, all committee rooms. And that's because we don't have the technology for that yet. But once you do that, then you will officially be completely controlling all of the activities of LACAG. And boy, oh boy, I welcome it.
Well, I won't put a shock collar on you quite yet, Chris, and I won't submit to AI being implanted in your brain or your neck or anywhere else.
Not yet.
I love you too much for that. So I'll just
Okay.
continue to text you. That's okay with you.
Okay, but no AI yet. Thank you, Danielle. I've been stressed all day about this. I got another week.
Yeah. Okay. Also, just a reminder, please make a point to take actions on the LACAG Action Center page as often as you can, www.lacag.org, or you can go to you can navigate there from freedomstate.us if that's where you end up going. And while you're there, please sign up for our alerts in case we have a big push come up for a particular bill. But right now, we're just relying on you to take action on the things that are important to you. As always, the most time-sensitive bills are at the top. So with those announcements, Chris, anything else from your side on announcements?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Well, we're going to get into what happened just this past week, and plenty did happen. Let's start out with that nasty cockroach, Senate Bill 98 by Senator Patrick McMath. And this is the one that wants to criminalize you for using your cell phone while you're driving your car. They apparently in the legislature don't believe that people are capable of doing this. And they want to just continue to strip away our freedoms and our ability to, I don't know, talk on a phone in an old car, for instance. But it passed House Transportation this week. We are obviously strong opposition to this, and it is set for third reading and final passage in the House. There's no date set on that, Chris, yet, but and obviously with the numbers on this, it doesn't look fantastic right now, but it has been killed at a late stage before, so we can be hopeful about that, right?
Absolutely, it's been killed on a late stage before. In fact, it was killed on the House floor last year. So it could be killed. Well, it was either killed on the House floor last year, or it was killed in the post vote in the conference committee. But either way, it was killed very, very late, or it may have never been even called on the House floor last year. I'm not exactly sure.
Well, there's an idea.
Yeah, it wasn't called. But you know what? The two biggest selling points for this bill this year, Danielle, are the main one is that McMath is calling this only a secondary violation. And let me tell you what that means. And this distinguishes it from the bill from last year. Last year, if a cop saw someone talking on a handheld cell phone, if that bill had passed, he could have pulled him over, ticketed them, gotten him into court in front of a judge, fined him, made him pick up trash, all that stuff. But you can't. But not this year, because this year talking on a handheld cell phone is a secondary violation, which means that the cop can, if a cop sees you supposedly to only talking on a handheld cell phone, he can't stop you unless you're also doing something else wrong, unless you're also speeding or engaged in reckless operation, this, that, and the other. The problem with it is that many police officers, and I'm not trying to impugn them all, but police officers often will pull people over if they see them talking on a cell phone and say that they didn't use a turn signal, or say that they switched lanes recklessly or whatever. And it's just a pretext. because they know they can't stop them only for talking on a handheld cell phone. So they'll stop them when they see it and then come up with another reason later on. Not all police officers are honest. That's the problem. If I thought, Danielle, that the only time a police officer was going to stop someone who was talking on a handheld cell phone in a car was if they were also engaged in some other traffic violation that may pose a risk to other motorists, then I would be far less concerned about this bill. But I know that's not the way this is going to work out in practice. It may be in the bill, but I promise you, police officers will be pulling people over when they see them talking on a cell phone, and they will be coming up with another reason that they say they stopped them for, and also ding them for talking on the cell phone. Insurance rates are going to go up. They're going to be going to court. They're going to be paying big fines. And the state of Louisiana is going to have another source of revenue from law-abiding Louisiana citizens. That's the problem with this bill. And I am hopeful still that this can be killed on the House floor, Danielle.
Yeah, well, Chris, I agree with you. And I think that if Senator McMath could prove to us that traffic cops don't have quotas to meet, then I could maybe consider this, which honestly, I really couldn't, but let's just pretend. But the point is, they do have quotas to meet, and they are looking for a reason to pull people over because it's basically like a sales job where they have to pull over a certain number of people and get ticketed, get them ticketed. So I just can't get on board with this. I'm like, this is like just giving them another hammer to give you a ticket with. I don't like it at all. And look, this is like saying, okay, well, if you're driving 1 mile over the speed limit, well, normally they wouldn't pull you over for that. But if you were also talking on your cell phone and driving 1 mile over the speed limit, watch out, folks.
Watch out, folks. I don't like it one bit. It creates more of an incentive. And then it goes from 1 mile over the speed limit to 9 miles over the speed limit, if that's the way they choose to stretch it out. And if they're not using a radar gun, it's their word against the motorist word in court. And 9 times out of 10, who do you think they're going to believe? They're going to believe the cop. So a guy's going to get hit for speeding, and he's also going to get hit for talking on his cell phone. This is terrible. And by the way, Danielle, this is just more of a parenthetical observation here, but it is interesting that they're in there arguing at the committee that this is going to lower insurance rates for motorists across Louisiana. It's going to lower insurance rates, okay? And yet State Farm is in there promoting the legislation. An insurance company that lives and dies by profits that they receive from insurance premiums. And they're in there supporting a bill that's going to reduce insurance premiums across the board. Does that make sense?
Don't think so.
Of course it doesn't.
Don't think so.
And I mentioned that. This is ridiculous. I know we're spending a little bit of time on this, but we got on the House floor and we need a lot of calls to action on this because this is just absurd. It's ridiculous. And McMath, by the way, is a very decent guy. We're going to be talking about another bill that he's authoring later on. That's a good bill and a needed bill. But on this bill, this is not one of his better efforts. And he basically conceded to me in the committee that there's not one study that's been done that shows any connection whatsoever between talking on a handheld cell phone in a car and increased traffic accidents. Not one. So I needed to point that out too.
Yeah, but let's pass a law that causes all kinds of chaos for people. Good job.
Yeah, and makes insurance companies more money and more money for the state of Louisiana on the backs of Louisiana citizens.
All right, well, let's move on to Senate Bill 371 by Senator Regina Barrow. This one is pretty, I would say, a little controversial, but not that controversial. This one provides for surgical castration of child molesters.
Yeah. And, Danielle, what can I say about this? It is not just for, for child molesters. And it's I think the age is 13 and younger.
Yeah.
age 13 and younger. And the bill originally included a broad range of criminal offenses. In any kind of sexual offense against a child is reprehensible. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
some are far worse than others, and not all. They all warrant imprisonment. They all warrant severe penalties, incarceration, but they don't all warrant something as drastic as castration. So the bill was narrowed on the Senate floor to the aggravated offenses for which castration can be considered by a judge once conviction occurs. The judge is not mandated to impose castration, but he is authorized to impose castration if a medical doctor determines that it is appropriate under the circumstances. And I guarantee you what a trained medical doctor, is going to be trying to find out when they interview a convict who's been convicted of a serious sex crime is whether or not he has an ongoing propensity to do it, whether or not he has any ability not to do it. And I guarantee you that if a doctor concludes that this defendant is likely to become a recidivist, is likely to repeat this offense once he's released from imprisonment, 9 times out of 10, the judge is going to order the castration in those heinous type of cases, not only to punish for the past crime, but to prevent it from occurring in the future. I think it's a good bill overall. The reservation that I had about it, Danielle, that somebody on the House floor brought up, was what happens in a situation if someone's convicted of a heinous crime that would authorize a judge to impose a sentence of castration, and later his sentence is reversed by a reviewing court based upon a lack of evidence, or ultimately he's exonerated. You can't reverse that procedure. I think that would be a very rare situation, and I think the fact that the court is not required to impose it, and the fact that there would be a doctor who's trained to make a determination about whether or not a defendant has the propensity, makes my concern that I just articulated less weighty than it otherwise would be.
Yeah, and Chris, as we were discussing this before the show today, you also mentioned that the castration would not happen until the person is almost walking out of the jail. Like, they will have exhausted pretty much all of their appeals, and they will be at the point of release before this would happen. It's not like you've been in jail 3 days and snip, snip.
That's right. And again, that's a great point. It would be occurring 8 or 10 days or so before they are released from prison, which means they're going back out into society. So all these things would be the case. They've been convicted. If they're about to be released from prison, that means that all of their due process appeals have probably been exhausted at that point. They've served their sentence. They're leaving. And they've had a medical doctor evaluate them and make a determination that this person may be likely to repeat the offense. So we need to take care of this and make sure this happens. So this can't occur again. So in that situation, that's a good scenario. And in situations, Danielle, where a person pleads guilty to a crime like this, if they're not sentenced to incarceration, then the likelihood that a judge is going to order this is extremely slim. If the mitigating circumstances of a case are such that a judge does not sentence someone to incarceration for a crime like this, chances are he's not going to order that they be castrated. So that's another thing. They are guilty, and the statute does say if you are guilty, a judge can do this. If someone's not sentenced to an incarcerated period imprisonment, then I would say the chances of this being imposed. So I think it's going to work out, and I think it's going to work out fairly. And I think the benefits of the legislation far outweigh any potential downsides of it.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, this is about protecting children, and that to me is the paramount concern. And so if offenders are going back out on the streets, I think I appreciate Senator Barrow for bringing this. And like I said, she's only doing what a lot of us have thought of and didn't have the position to be able to do. So hats off to you, Senator Barrow, for bringing this and for wanting to protect the children of the state of Louisiana from criminals like this. Absolutely.
I could not agree more. And she handled herself very well on the Senate floor, even against some of her own Democratic colleagues who, as I'm sure you can anticipate, brought in the specter of racism and the ignominious history of race when, I guess, according to them, African Americans, as part of their penalty, used to be castrated. I don't know exactly the history of that, but of course they took advantage of the opportunity to somehow relate this to race. Very unfortunate.
This, in my view, doesn't have one single thing to do with race. It has everything to do with child molestation and taking advantage of children in the worst possible way. So I think people should at least be castrated. And I'm not sure that I could oppose a sight more than that. So we will leave it at that for now.
We'll leave it at that. But some of the arguments that I heard made against this bill were entirely severed from reality.
A lot of our legislators are severed from reality. So what are you going to say? Okay, Chris, we'll move on now. Senate Bill 221 by Senator Kathy. This was a simple bill that would put taxes where the money is actually made by the state. It's a railroad bill. We were in support of it, and it failed in Senate Revenue and Fiscal Affairs. Chris, do you want to talk a little bit about what this bill was about and what it represents, the fact that our legislators can't just share the pie with the people who earned the money in the pie?
Yeah, $8 to $10 million of ad valorem taxes from these railroads, these rail companies that drive all over the state of Louisiana. There's rail track laid down in almost every parish in the state. And these non-domiciled railroad companies, they come through and they're hauling all their goods all through the state, just passing through. And they're not domiciled here. And yet Louisiana imposes an $8 or $10 million yearly tax for them to use our railroad tracks. And they go all over the state, all through different parishes, but all of the tax comes right to Baton Rouge. It's not equitably distributed based upon the amount of rail track or even on the amount of usage of the rail track by these rail companies going through other parishes. And Stuart Cathy basically said, well, this really isn't fair. These railroad companies are not just using rail track in Baton Rouge and in East Baton Rouge Parish. They're going all over the state. They're essentially using the infrastructure from parishes across the state. And so why shouldn't this tax be distributed equitably based on some formula that we can come up with? And it looked very fair. Stuart Cathy and I talked about this. And he went in, he did a good job presenting the bill. And everybody from Baton Rouge, from the mayor to the Sheriff Gautreaux, Mayor Broom, Cleo Fields, were all sitting at the table opposing this bill. The members of the committee who voted against it, do you know what they all had in common?
They probably were not from one of the parishes that the rail goes through.
They were all from right here in Baton Rouge, all from right here in Baton Rouge. And do you know what the four people who voted for Cathy's bill in the committee all had in common?
Not from Baton Rouge?
They're not from Baton Rouge. And they want to have a portion of money that they believe that they are entitled to. And this should not all come to Baton Rouge. Look, I live in Baton Rouge, so I have no vested interest in seeing any money that should come here, not come here. I live here. This is my city and my parish. But this was just plain fair. It failed on a 7-4 vote. And the reason why it failed was because Baton Rouge does not want to give up this money. It's that simple.
Well, it's time for Baton Rouge to start giving up money. And, there's bigger issues than that as well. Of course, we think here on this show that Washington should be giving up money and, stop holding us hostage with our own tax dollars. But Baton Rouge is not far off from Washington when it comes to amassing tax dollars and holding localities hostage. so before they can get their own tax dollars back to run the needs of their parishes. And we may have to have a whole entire show dedicated to that, because I feel very passionate about this topic. Chris, you and I have talked about the fact that Senate Municipal Affairs and the House Local Affairs committees should not even exist. Why should they exist? Those roles do not belong in Baton Rouge. They're not the purview of a legislator. They're the purview of the parish council, the police jury, the mayor, the parish president. They're not the purview of our legislators in Baton Rouge. And frankly, we've talked to several legislators who say, I feel ill-equipped to even be on this because I don't understand the particularities of each parish's issues. I'm going to, I'll try and claw myself back from creating that episode right now. But look, Baton Rouge needs to give it up.
Yes, whenever I now know, the Rosetta Stone of taking you from a very delightful mood to a very bad mood is just say these words: Committee on Cultural and Municipal Affairs. And then that will take you from being on cloud nine to being in an absolutely horrible mood, because you do not understand why we need a committee in Baton Rouge to tell local municipal people about how to handle their municipal and cultural affairs, their local affairs.
Yeah.
And it comes down to an issue of federalism, to local autonomy and local authority. And every time, I don't think there's been a time that we have mentioned any bill that's going before that committee when you have not just said, I hate that particular committee. I think you dislike that one more than the Commerce Committee in the House, but I think you dislike the Commerce Committee just because of the makeup of it. You like this one just because of what it implies.
It's nothing against the people. It's absolutely nothing against the people who serve on the committee. That's the truth.
Not at all.
It is just the point of the committee itself and the arrogance that created the committee. I don't know if you're listening and you created the committee, please call me. I'd like to talk to you about it. Okay, yes. Moving on. Senate Bill 420.
I'll referee.
Senate Bill 420 by Senator Hodges. This one is creating the crime of election fraud or forgery. We're big supporters of that. It passed in the Senate in a 27-11 vote. Chris, every single Democrat voted against it, and it has been referred to the House Administration of Criminal Justice.
And every Republican voted for it. And were there any absent Republicans?
No, I don't think so. So not on my list.
Yeah, good. That's good. So SB 420. By the way, Valerie Hodges has done. What a warrior. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but what an absolute warrior she is. And this is not the only thing she's done, but this creates the crime of fraud and forgery in registering to vote. If you go in and anything within the registration or the election process or the voting process, you lie about who you are, you forge your name, you misrepresent your identity, you say that you're illegal, you are legal when you're an illegal immigrant and not eligible to vote, all that stuff will become the criminal crime, the crime of fraud and forgery with substantial penalties and substantial fines. And I think that this is so important in light of the cultural atmosphere that we live in now with the number of illegal immigrants pouring into our country. We have got to be circumspect and diligent about making sure that everybody who votes in Louisiana elections is doing so legally and fairly. As I've emphasized more than once before, Danielle, probably on the last show, anybody who thinks that these leftist Soros-funded organizations are not going to be pushing these illegal immigrants to the polls to get them to try to vote, then you are extraordinarily naive. That's the whole reason why they're allowing them into the country and not doing anything about it, because they want a new voting base. This bill is so important, and it will create an opportunity for DAs and law enforcement to arrest and prosecute people who lie about who they are in an effort to fraudulently register to vote in Louisiana. It's a great bill.
Yeah, it is a great bill. And another great bill that will be A companion to it, hopefully hand in hand with it, is Senate Bill 436 by Senator Facey, my senator, and it is requiring proof of citizenship to vote. Well, to register to vote, really. And then he said you can, after you register to vote and prove that you're a citizen, then you can use your driver's license like normal. So it
Yeah.
makes perfect sense to me. This bill, again, every Democrat voted against it. It passed 28-10. It has been referred to the House and Governmental Affairs Committee.
Danielle, this passed the Senate, correct? The full Senate floor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's a very, very good bill. I'm glad Senator Facey brought it. By the way, he brought this bill in large part because we put a lot of pressure on him and other senators to make sure that this proof was the requirement that someone present proof of citizenship when they register to vote be codified. It was very, very important. And it has been. Now, the problem with the legislation, as we talked about last time, was that there is an amendment that was attached to it in committee that makes the legislation effective in January of 2025. We don't have until January of 2025, and there's absolutely no reason why our Secretary of State cannot come up with a simple, not unduly burdensome mechanism of determining whether or not someone who's trying to register to vote is a United States citizen. That cannot be that hard to do. And why she wants to wait until January of 2025 instead of securing this system for the fall elections is absolutely beyond me. And this has to be amended on the House side, either in committee or on the floor. To be honest with you, I don't know. It might have been amended on the Senate floor. Did you look at any amendments on this, Danielle? I didn't have a chance to look at any amendments. Bottom line is, if that amendment that makes this bill effective in January of 2025 was not amended on the Senate floor, then it has to be on the House side, because we don't have until January of 2025 to make sure people are showing that they're a citizen when they go register to vote. We don't have that kind of time.
Said. Very well said, Chris. And maybe just a note to the listeners, this is an action item on our Action Center. And if this is important to you, if you agree with us that this cannot wait until January of 2025, please go on there and let not just the House Governmental Affairs Committee know, let Secretary of State Landry know, because we have those action alerts targeting her office as well, because we know that she is the person who needs to be convinced. If she gave the House a green light, I guarantee you they would flip on this and absolutely go ahead and put an amendment. Hopefully they put an amendment regardless of her green light, but you can register your voice on this once a day, every day. So by all means, go to our Action Center, powered by Voter Voice. Go to our Action Center and take action on this Senate Bill 436, proof of citizenship to vote. So I think that we can make this happen, Chris. There has to be the will in the House to get this done.
There has to be. I mean, there just has to be. And I just looked at it, and it does not look like it was. It does not look like it was amended on the Senate floor. It says the amendment, the committee amendment was not stripped off on the floor, so it has to be done on the House side. And there's no question about it. Please go do this call to action on SB 436. It will go straight to the Secretary of State, right?
Yeah, it'll go to the Secretary of State, and it'll go to every member of the House and Governmental Affairs. It'll probably also go to your member of the House as well. Okay, moving on to Senate Bill 283 by Senator Royce Duplessis. This one would repeal the crime against nature by solicitation. This is the gay prostitution bill. He's trying to get that repealed because of your calls to action, because you took action on this. This bill didn't only fail once, it failed twice on the Senate floor, and it actually lost support in the second time it was brought before the Senate. So hats off to everyone who took the time to do that call to action and just let your senators know that morality is a standard that we want to uphold in the state of Louisiana. And we're not going to let this slide. And we're not going to just say, look the other way, because Senator Duplessis would like us to.
Exactly. And, Danielle, this bill was defeated, I can assure you, because of the direct contacts that we made to senators relentlessly and repeatedly. The calls to action from LACAG members, direct contacts from others to these senators, understanding and clarifying that Senator Duplessis was not completely forthright in the presentation that he gave on this bill in the committee. And long and the short of it is, the crimes against nature through solicitation should not be repealed. It is a different crime from prostitution. It is not covered under the prostitution statute, even though there are some common elements. They are two different crimes. He suggested that they were not two different crimes, which they are, and the Senate caught on to that. And so I don't think this is coming back. The crimes against nature through solicitation in Louisiana will still remain a crime in Louisiana. Is that right, Danielle? He can't bring it back again,
Correct.
Can he?
I don't think he's going to get a third chance on this one. I mean, the numbers don't look good for him. And honestly, no one's going to get anything positive out of voting for this, because we're going to make noise about it.
Amen.
Yeah. All right. Next up, House Bill 958 by Representative Beryl Amity. And this one would have prevented or prohibited financial incentives or penalties to encourage healthcare providers to administer vaccines. Look, this was defeated on the House floor in a 33-62 vote. And Chris, I want you to talk about it here in a minute, but let me just give the highlight reel. I want everyone to slow down and listen. These are the people who voted for it. So if your legislator is in this list, you have a good one. All right, let's start out. Okay, Beryl voted for her own bill. Good job. Representative Larry Bagley, Mike Baham, Beth Billings, Ryan Boryok, Chad Boyer, Rhonda Butler, Josh Carlson, Emily Chenevere, Raymond Cruz, Philip DeVilliers, Jason DeWitt, Kathy Edmonston, Peter Egan, Julie Emerson, Gabe Ferment, Brian Fontenot, Jay Galley, Brian Glorioso, Troy Hebert, Dodie Horton, Jacob Landry, Danny McCormick, Jack McFarland, Dixon McMakin, Michael Mellorin, Chuck Owen, Rodney Shammerhorn, Lori Schlegel, Philip Tarver, Lauren Ventrilla, Roger Wilder, and Jeff Wiley. I also, Chris, just want to take a minute to mention who was absent, because there were quite a number of Republicans who were absent for this vote, and it wasn't going to make up the difference. But I just think it bears mentioning, because we know that some of these absent votes are done this way so that they don't take the heat for registering a no vote, which is what they want to do. And so I'm not saying that's absolutely the case. Maybe someone had to step out of the room, but I will nonetheless read you the names of those who could not even press the button with a yes or no, and they were Bo Boyo, Vincent Cox, Kelly Dickerson, Brett Guyman, Jeremy Lacombe. I think y'all have heard that name a time or two in this type of list. Joe Angeron, Neil Reiser, Debbie Villio, and Mark Wright. So if those are one of your representatives, you may want to just drop them a line, send them a note to their office and say, this vote was important to me. Can you please explain your absence on this vote? And I think they deserve an answer.
They do. They do.
Yeah, they deserve to give you an answer.
Yeah. And some of those who were absent were far, far less suspicious. And those names recur far, far fewer times than some of the other names on there. Like Brett Guyman. I'm not overly concerned about Brett Guyman because I know how he stands on these issues. And I guarantee you that is one of the rare votes that he missed. I'm not overly concerned. It's the pattern of absences
it is.
that we're concerned by. But anybody who missed the vote, it was an important vote. It's unfortunate that they would have missed that vote. And Danielle, people need to understand on this HB 958 with Beryl Amity, all through COVID, the whole time, these medical providers, these medical doctors were being hammered with financial incentives by their insurance companies, financial incentives to administer these vaccines, the COVID vaccine, I'm sure other vaccines, and doctors who didn't, I'm sure, were probably being penalized by their insurance companies for not doing so. And this bill would simply do away with any participation whatsoever by health insurance companies about whether or not a doctor chooses to administer a vaccine. And what business is it of a health insurance company whether a doctor makes a decision in the best interest of his patient to give or not to give, administer a vaccine? What interest is that of a health insurance company? It just made, but it was an important issue that Representative Amade was trying to address here. She thought she was, I think, so incensed, disturbed, surprised by this vote that she actually put it up on Twitter, or now X, and said, "Here's the bill that I brought. Here was the breakdown. We have 105 members of the state of the House of Representatives, and only 33 voted in favor." I would like to know why. I would like to know why all those Republicans voted against this bill.
Yeah, well, it's a very good question. And if anyone is interested in that X post by Representative Amade, we're going to have it in the show notes, because she also attached to it, Chris, a fantastic video that outlines that doctors get paid to sell vaccines, period, end of story. And for anyone who is trying to say that there's no conflict of interest with these, there's none of this is happening. Healthcare providers are not incentivized to vaccinate people. Baloney. And there's a doctor with in this video who will share that with you. And anyway, we'll put it in the show notes. You can listen for yourself.
And the video is something like, the title of it is, this is a pediatric doctor. This is a doctor who practiced for years and years and many, many years. And I think the title of the video is, "We Get Paid to Administer Vaccines," or something like that. He talks about the financial incentive. So it is an absolute fact that there is great financial incentive on the part of doctors by their health insurers to administer these vaccines, whether or not they're in the best interest of the patient. I'm just very disappointed in this vote. Beryl Amade is a very, very good legislator, and it's just disappointing.
It is disappointing. Now, she's bringing another bill that has had more success than that one, and it's House Bill 908. This one prohibits the discrimination against students on the basis of their vaccination status. And it was voted out of House Education in a 7-3 vote along party lines. Absent for the vote, however, were Josh Carlson, Barbara Freiberg, and Vincent St. Blanc. So if those are one of your representatives, you may want to just touch base with their office and ask why they could not be present to vote on this important bill that would protect students and protect their rights while they're at school in their extracurricular activities. This bill is pending House floor action, and I think we could expect to see it in this week, but it hasn't been scheduled yet.
So this passed out of committee, Danielle, but the 3 Republicans that you just named were absent for the vote?
Correct.
In committee. And could you say who they were one more time? Carlson, Vinnie St. Blanc?
Carlson, Freiberg. Mm-hmm.
And Vinnie St. Blanc.
Freiberg.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure that the listeners got that. They were absent for the vote. And this will be going on the House floor, and hopefully we get this passed. And look, all the bill says is that when a student is in school, he cannot be discriminated against in any way, shape, or form in terms of his seating, in terms of his capacity to participate in extracurricular activities, including sports. He just can't be discriminated against within the school environment based on whether he's been vaccinated or not. That's it. What is so controversial about this?
Yeah, exactly. It's not controversial, and we should expect it to pass, but we'll see what happens. All right. Next up is House Bill 256 is now House Bill 975. by Representative Dodie Horton, and this one is making it so that parents in the state of Louisiana have a say over the procedures that their children do and do not get related to basically any medical procedure or treatment. This is a bill, by the way, Chris, that we are going to be scoring legislators on. This one is so important that we are going to take note, and this one will be registered, whether they were there, whether they were not there, and whether they voted against it. It will be reflected in their LACAG score. You said that Paige Lowry testified. Oh, yeah, well, the reason for it, well, you can get into that in just a minute, but you said that Paige Lowry testified in support of this bill extremely well. It did pass the House Health and Welfare Committee unanimously. So thank you, House Health and Welfare Committee. Thank you, Paige Lowry. Really appreciate you. 2 Republicans were absent for the vote. They were Rhonda Butler and Joe Stagney, and it's pending House floor action. But please talk about the developments in this bill, Chris, and if you also want to tell us a little bit about Paige's testimony.
Paige did just a wonderful job. You know, she's so well versed and so well spoken when it comes to parental rights and parental authority over their children. Moms for Liberty, Paige Lowry's principal organization, is devoted really foundationally to ensuring parental authority and parental rights over their children, because her fear and their fear is that those rights and the supremacy of parents over the direction and supervision of their children is under constant assault, and that the state is injecting itself more and more into the upbringing and the direction of children. And so this bill was so important because this bill will repeal the current law in Louisiana. A lot of people don't understand, Danielle, that right now in the state of Louisiana, minors can actually go into a healthcare facility and get medical treatment of pretty much whatever nature or kind if they sign something saying that they think there's something wrong with them. I've got a problem with me. Let me explain to you what it is. Boom. They can go and get with any kind of medical procedure without having to contact a parent and get parental authority. I was shocked when I learned this, but Paige Lowry told me that that is the law, and I subsequently looked at the law. This new bill by Dodie Horton would repeal that and would absolutely require parental consent for any kind of medical procedure on their minor child before it can go forward or be done. And you'd think it's a no-brainer. There's no question about it. But in the day and age in which we live now, I'll be honest with you, nothing is a foregone conclusion, not even in Louisiana, and not even something that seems so fundamental as to require a minor child to get their parents' consent before they can undergo a medical procedure. It's shocking that we need a bill for this, but we do, and hopefully this will get through. And I am absolutely going to keep a close eye on which Republicans dare vote against this.
Yeah. Well, to me, it's all legislators. I want to keep an eye on every single one of them because, again, the protection of our children is too important. It's absolutely too important, and we will take note of that, and we will make sure that their constituents know about that as well.
And you've made a fair point, Danielle, about it's all legislators, because we've noticed lately, you and I'm so glad you brought that up. We've noticed that Democrats are really sort of increasingly coming over and voting in favor of some of this good social legislation. I've noticed that a little more this session, and some names come up more than others, but I'm very pleasantly surprised to see some Democrats coming over and voting the right way on some very important bills. I'm very heartened by that, to see that.
Yeah, and we are supporting quite a number of bills that are authored by Democrats this session as well. So we will talk about several of those today, but times are changing, folks. And I think it's more and more about the substance of the matter. I like to hope that that's the direction we're heading. The direction we should be heading is toward truth and substance, and not about party rhetoric, because party rhetoric gets us nowhere.
Amen. 100%. And you and I are constitutionalists. And I don't care whether my constitutionalist foxhole mate is a Democrat or a Republican. I just want to know if he's a constitutionalist.
That's right. Okay, Chris. Well, you promised the listeners that you would talk about a bill that was being brought by Senator McMath that was a great piece of legislation, and it is Senate Bill 165. It's his non-compete bill. And honestly, the timing for him to bring this bill could not have been better, because just this past week, the Federal Trade Commission banned non-compete agreements, citing that they're unenforceable as part of the reason for making that choice. But the FTC made a rule change, and this rule change, they're saying, was made to protect the fundamental freedom of workers to change jobs. It's their right to change jobs as a worker. Imagine that. In a Biden administration, the FTC is siding on the side of freedom and workers' rights. Can you believe that, Chris?
Well, I think it's very, very refreshing, very good to see. Now, this FTC decision, I believe, applied to nonprofits. Not that it necessarily changes the whole rationale, but McMath's bill deals with for-profit institutions, for-profit hospitals.
It was only for nonprofits. The headlines did not lead us to believe that.
Okay. My understanding was that it was, and if I stand corrected on that, I had learned that might have applied just to nonprofits, but I may be wrong.
Okay, we'll dig into it a little bit more after.
Yeah, but McMath's bill is a good bill, and there's a couple of layers to it. On the first layer, he deals with primary care doctors and general doctors like general OBGYN doctors, internists, and other primary care doctors, that first level. And his bill says that it's a 3-year term. You can sign a 3-year contract with your employer as a doctor, and you can include a non-compete within that contract. But it cannot go beyond the end of the contract. So if there's a non-compete in the contract, once that contract is over and terminated and you move on, they cannot restrict you in any way, shape, or form. Now, there is a provision, though, in there that says if the contract terminates before the 3-year term is up, he says the maximum non-compete period that can be imposed on someone is 2 years. Beyond that. So my question in committee was, suppose someone is in gets to 2.5 years in a 3-year term, and then the contract terminates. Do they get to hold that employee for another 2 years from termination of the contract, even though it was only 6 months left in the term? So we're asking him to amend the legislation to make sure that if a contract terminates, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months before the end of it, that non-compete must end at the conclusion of the contract. They don't get to hold them for another 2 years after the contract is terminated. And because that's not fair. That doesn't do anything to help these internists or these primary care doctors. Basically, the same rule applies to specialists. They have 5 years, all the same rules, and then the subspecialists, they can hold them to a non-compete for significantly longer. But this is a good bill overall. The only concern we have is, as I just said, whether or not an employer can hold a doctor for another 2 years beyond the conclusion of a terminated contract, if the contract is terminated just a few months or whatever before the 3-year period's up. That is not fair. The non-compete should have to terminate when the contract terminates. And that is what we're pushing hard on. I explained that to McMath in the committee, and he said he was going to try to make some adjustments to the bill.
Great. Well, Chris, I did look it up. And what I'm seeing is that it says the FTC bans non-compete clauses for all companies nationwide. Chamber of Commerce vows to sue. So I think big corporate is not super happy about this, which I can understand. I also understand that if the Biden administration was involved in it in some way, shape, or form, it's probably maybe not that legit. But I think the narrative around non-competes, holding people hostage, holding the economy hostage is an important conversation for us to be having, because people should have the right to leave their job. And frankly, big corporations should be incentivized to treat their people better. I think a lot of the reason people leave jobs in these big companies is because they're treated like a number and instead of a person. And so if that was if the pressure and the balance of power were to be a little more balanced, I think that would change, and maybe we would see people happy to stay at their, at their place of employment. All that to say, I think your point is very important, that this is a bill that needs to be codified in Louisiana state law, because the rule is just a rule. It's an executive rule from a federal government agency far, far away.
Far, far away. And lastly, non-competes, Danielle, are highly disfavored in courts in Louisiana. They're because, as you said, they restrict people's ability to earn a living. They restrict the economy, and people should be able to earn a living. So non-competes are very, very highly disfavored in Louisiana. I think McMath's bill overall is good. I'm glad he brought it. I'm glad we were able to testify on it. But he's got to make this change that we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, and it had strong support. It passed House Health and Welfare unanimously, Chris, and it will pass to the House floor for final debate and passage. But that has not yet been scheduled. I would expect it in the next week or so. Next up is Senate Bill 279 by Senator Facey, and this one is his bill to get illegal immigrants off the road. There's not so much to report here, except that we support the bill. He brought it. He's trying to get it rescheduled. It wasn't able to be heard last week, and when it was initially meant to be scheduled, and so this one would be a great one to take action on. So the committee understands that it's important to you, and they will put it back on the calendar. I believe, Chris, if I'm not mistaken, Senator Patrick Connick chairs that committee.
Yep, Senator Connick chairs the committee, and he needs to get an email encouraging people to encouraging his committee to vote for this when it get back up there. The reason why Senator Facey brought this bill was that there's a whole lot of illegal aliens, at least in his parish, Terrebonne Parish, and your parish, Danielle, down there, where they're getting in these wrecks. They don't have any insurance at all. They're doing all kind of damage, causing all kind of harm, and they have no insurance on their vehicle. And come to find out they're illegal. They're not even supposed to be in the country. And all his bill would have required police officers to report their immigration status upon discovery to Homeland Security for possible deportation, and would have impounded the vehicle. And I'm not sure exactly what is so draconian about those measures. They're not supposed to be here. They're driving a vehicle that they may or may not own with no insurance, and they're potentially in accidents as well. So, I'm not sure exactly what's so draconian about impounding a vehicle and citing them for these things and reporting their immigration status to ICE. I don't see what the issue is with the bill, but apparently there were some Republican committee members who did, and I don't know exactly why. Pat McMath was one of them, I think.
Maybe you should ask
him.
And
I think Pat might own a construction company, and maybe Pat benefits from having some of the illegal aliens work for his company. I don't know for sure if that's true.
Well, he certainly wouldn't want them driving his company vehicles uninsured. He wouldn't have them
Exactly.
uninsured driving his company vehicles. So this is the main
Well, you
thing.
know what? That's a good point. That's a very good point. I don't know
Yeah.
what the reason for this is, but this is. But I love the way Senator Facey handled himself in front of that committee. He was fiery. He was strong, and he was. I was just proud of
He
him.
held his ground. Yeah, he held his ground.
He
I was
did.
very proud of him as well. And I hope this bill gets back on the committee schedule. So please go ahead and just take a quick action. Let the committee know you expect this to come back onto the schedule and you expect them to vote positively for it. Okay,
Important bill.
we're getting close to the end of what happened this past week, so you're almost there. House Bill 515 by Representative Dodie Horton. This is a fantastic bill. It basically puts the government on notice and says, you can't tell me what kind of vehicle I can buy. I don't have to buy an EV. I don't have to buy a hybrid. I don't have to buy a 1987 Pinto. I can buy whatever I want, and I will. And, Chris, I've mentioned previously, my dad pointed out that the EPA can still put regulations on us regardless of what the local government does. But this is a good step in the right direction. And I really appreciate Representative Horton bringing it. It was reported favorably from Senate Transportation. So it is moving quite along. So it is set for final passage. And if it passes the Senate House, it will be hopefully signed by the governor shortly. So there's no date on that yet, but we expect it to be pretty soon.
Good bill, and I love it. The government does not get to dictate what kind of car I buy or punish me for what kind of car I buy, even if it happens quite shockingly to run on gasoline
Or diesel.
or diesel. I'm sorry, government, but my car runs on gas or runs on diesel. You don't get to penalize me for that. And you don't get to tell me that I have to buy an electric car. I love that. And this is a great example of preemptive legislation because I don't think the government is currently doing that. But Dodie Horton has some foresight. She can see it coming down the pike. I love preemptive legislation, and that's what this is.
Yeah. And I would also just echo your statement, Chris, and say that the government doesn't buy my gas or my diesel, so they shouldn't be able to tell me how much of it I can buy or if I can buy it. Anyway,
Absolutely.
Those things fire me up. I'm excited to share a fantastic opportunity for State of Freedom listeners who are interested in investing in precious metals or even starting a home-based business in the precious metals industry. Metal Stacks is a precious metals collectors club where you can buy your metals at the best prices on the market, actual dealer cost. They are beating the big sites. They have no credit card fees and no minimums. If you're just interested in purchasing metals at a great price, visit metalstacks.com/dwalker. Get to shopping, that helps me out. I get the commission. You can also refer people to Metal Stacks for an additional income. If you're interested in learning about the referral business aspect of Metal Stacks, email me directly at Danielle@freedomstate.us for more information. All right, next up, House Bill 579. We haven't talked about this one before. It's being brought by Representative McMahon, and it would authorize pharmacists to dispense HIV medications or treatments pre-exposure and post-exposure as prophylaxis. This passed the full House unanimously. It was recently, just this past week, voluntarily deferred in Senate Health and Welfare. We kind of expect it to come back. And a big issue that we take with this is that it puts an undue burden and liability on pharmacists who don't have access to a full medical history. And Chris, this is not so dissimilar from a bill we spent a lot of time opposing last year that would have allowed pharmacists or really in a way required pharmacists to vaccinate young children without access to their medical history.
Exactly. I talked to Thomas Presley about this bill, Danielle, and he is of the opinion that pharmacists, as much as we need good pharmacists, there's no question about it. And thank God we have good pharmacists, like your parents. His position when I spoke to him was he's a senator we respect, was that they're not trained in infectious disease medicine. Pharmacies don't have laboratory equipment that allows them to perform the type of extensive testing that's needed to make prescribing safe. While this would only be allowed for HIV negative customers, what happens when a customer tests positive in the pharmacy? Pharmacists are not trained to help a HIV positive customer navigate the next step. So I think that Thomas is traditional, and I think he believes that this treatment, these therapies, including prescription medications, laboratory tests, all kinds of therapy, this is the kind of thing that doctors should be doing. This is the kind of thing that doctors are trained for. And this illness is sufficiently serious to justify a regimen that is supervised by a trained medical doctor. And I agree with him on that. And as you said a minute ago also, Danielle, it does open pharmacists up for increased liability.
Yeah, it does. And I just, Chris, you and I have talked about this, and I just don't really understand the purpose of this bill. I don't really like this idea that why are they targeting HIV as something that needs to be treated by pharmacists? I mean, we can't get ivermectin over the counter, but you want us to have pharmacists dispense HIV medicines based on the fact that someone says that they don't have HIV when they might. To me, this is a recipe for, just I would say inadequate treatment or mistreatment, and it does open up pharmacists to some liability that they shouldn't have to face. Frankly, this is not necessarily what they signed up for.
Yeah, well, I've come to have a lot of respect for Thomas Presley. Thomas Presley, as you know, sponsored, was authoring a bill that we're going to get to here shortly. Probably the most important piece of legislation of the session, if not the last 10 years in Louisiana. He has done a lot of great things. I respect his opinion, and that's his opinion on this bill. I tend to take it seriously, and I tend to agree with him on the substance of the bill. So we're going to be opposing HB 579, and in all likelihood, I suppose we'll have a call to action up there before too long.
Yeah, there's not one yet, but I have a feeling there will be one very soon, and maybe even by the time you hear this. Okay, next up, we mentioned quite a number of bills that would have affected library boards, dealing with the Library Association in Louisiana. Well, not the Library Association in Louisiana, but the engagement of Louisiana librarians with the American Library Association. All of those bills were removed from hearing this past week. The hearing that I think the committee just was way overbooked. It should be rescheduled, but no date yet is set for those. I just don't think that committee has a new date on the calendar. So we'll just keep an eye out for that. And that brings us to the end of what happened this week, if you can believe it. So we should be able to march through what's up in the week ahead pretty quickly, because most of these bills you have heard about if you've been listening to our weekly updates. But let's just go ahead and get started. The first one is House Bill 800 by Representative Beaulieu, and it is his bill that would bring the convention to amend the Louisiana state constitution. He added some amendments to this bill in the House Civil Law Committee that would protect the core tenets of the Constitution. And maybe I'll also just mention that the suggested start date of this convention in the bill, as it currently stands, is May 20th, which, as many of you may know, is still during the regular legislative session. The date that they propose to end it is the last day of the current regular session, June 3rd, but they do admit that it could last as long as July 15th, but not 1 minute, not 1 second longer than that, Chris.
And I think, Danielle, the governor's position on this, and the reason why he feels the need to have a constitutional convention, is that right now our Constitution is stuffed with rules and regulations and prohibitions and mandates and laws that are not so fundamental that they should be in the Louisiana Constitution. Just like the United States Constitution, the Louisiana Constitution is supposed to be to lay out a broad framework of government, broad foundational principles. It's not supposed to be a document where laws that should be in statute are stuffed into the Constitution. That's not what it is. It's a broad governing document. It's a roadmap for how our government should be structured and how our laws should be passed. That's what it's all about and what the laws are. And his position is that we have amended this Constitution in Louisiana so many times that we've stuffed laws in there and regulations and all kind of that do not belong in the Constitution. So I think he's going on a purgative mission to purge from our Constitution things that do not belong there and revert those things back to statutory law in Louisiana. And I couldn't agree with him more on that. Again, we have to remember what the Constitution is and is not. So I love the fact that that is his focus on it. Now, there is an amendment, as you alluded to, Danielle, that Representative Beaulieu put into his legislation that will prohibit any alteration of certain core principles that already exist in the Louisiana Constitution, like Article 1, which is the Declaration of Rights, Article 2, Article 3, and Article 4, which outline our three branches of government, the separation of powers, their respective roles and functions. None of that can be messed with. And, it's unfortunate kind of that he would feel like he needed to put in legislation a prohibition against going in and trying to dismantle the fundamental structure of our government. But apparently that's not beyond the pale of certain people who may go in there and try to do that. So he amended it to say you can't mess with Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, or Article 4 of the Constitution. Those are the fundamental foundational principles of that document. Don't mess with it. So that's the amendment. But I think that the focus of the convention principally is to go in and excise and purge from the Constitution a whole lot of deadweight that should be in statutory law and not in the Constitution. And so that's what he's planning on doing. I think he's going to do it and do it well. And I understand where he's coming from. I am a little bit concerned. I don't want the governor to go in here and do anything to alter the Constitution that would give the executive branch of government any more power. And you know what? According to this amendment by Beaulieu, the governor will not be able to go in and in any way alter the separation of powers as they exist in the Constitution now. So maybe we shouldn't even be concerned about the governor trying to do that, because he can't, apparently, under this amendment.
That amendment brought me a lot of comfort, Chris, and I think it's going to bring comfort to a lot of people across the state of Louisiana, because you think about a constitutional convention and the first thing that your mind goes to is they're going to wreck everything, because, just look at the state of our world. But if this is being done for the right reasons and with the right guardrails, I think that we can maybe come up with a better final product that makes dealing with the law and getting things done at the legislature much easier. And frankly, that cuts the bureaucracy for the people of the state as well. So I'm very hopeful. I remain hopeful and positive on this. And I hope that we continue to see just some refining and improving as this bill moves through the process.
And I'm going to be very, very excited about watching this very closely and doing a few very good interviews with some of the delegates at the convention. And remember, Danielle, this is not a constitutional convention. This is a convention to amend the Constitution, courtesy of the great patriot and dear friend of our shows, Dave Landry.
That's right. Thank you, Dave, for that. Okay, Chris, moving on, there is a bill that we kind of caught up to a little bit later in the game, but it's going to the storied House Commerce Committee tomorrow, and it is Senate Bill 232 by Senator Mark Abraham, and it will establish gold and silver as legal tender in the state. And Chris, when we took a look at this, it looks like it kind of lays the groundwork for Senator Hodges' bill for transactional gold and silver to come with with fewer reservations, fewer objections once this makes it through. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I think once gold and silver is codified and established in law as legal tender in Louisiana, well, if it's legal tender, then it certainly should be able to be used as transactional currency in Louisiana. So I do think that this is a preparatory step toward getting gold and silver as transactional currency in Louisiana, just like the fiat-backed money that we use now. And by the way, Senator Cruz, for whom we have enormous respect, absolutely has confirmed with us just before we started the show today that he supports this legislation very much. And in fact, he's trying, I believe, to add bouillon to it. And he thinks that there will be an amendment. He said that Daryl Deschatel, the chairman of the Commerce Committee, has committed to him that he is going to make a motion to add bouillon to the bill. Gold, so it'll be gold, silver, and bouillon.
It's bullion, Chris. Even as a Cajun, I will say that this one is bullion and not bouillon. Bouillon goes in your gumbo, honey.
I'm from Shreveport. I've had honestly an inferiority complex every time I come down here and try to pronounce these terms. I'm from Shreveport. I mean, it's like, thank you for the correction, but did you have to do it right out here in public?
Yeah,
Lord.
it was best suited for right this minute. Okay. Look,
thanks.
Next up is House Civil Law Committee. There are a couple bills that we're interested in. A couple of them had previously been scheduled. Actually, they both passed. Okay. House Bill 48 and House Bill 49, both by Representative Bacala. These are proposed constitutional amendments, both related to the budget. The first one, House Bill 48, appropriately creates a simple 48-hour rule. Chris, is that right? And House Bill 49.
Yeah.
And then House Bill 49,
Don't you think it's interesting?
I know.
Don't you think it's interesting, Danielle, that House Bill 48 is the one that creates the 48-hour rule, and House Bill 49 is the one that allows the House of Representatives to vote to extend the session 2 days at a time. I don't think they can go more than 2 days at a time. But you know why he brought these bills was to prevent this incredible debacle, this absolute just chaos that occurred on the House floor at the end of the 2023 session last year, which was not only an embarrassment to our state, but really a national embarrassment, where the Senate is sending all these amendments to the House Appropriations Bill back over to the House in the last hour of a session with all of these pork barrel spending provisions in there that they had absolutely no time to read before the session ended. It was just a disgrace and a disaster. And so that's what these bills are intended to do, is to make sure that the House has plenty of time, at least 2 days, to thoroughly review any appropriations amendments. That is, bills that comprise the spending of large amounts of our money, proposed legislation, to be reviewed by the House before they vote on it, so they can figure out where our money is going. And these passed. Both of these bills passed. But if I'm not mistaken, Danielle, there were some Republicans who voted against these items of legislation, not the least of whom is the one and only Jessica Domain from your neck of the woods down there in Terrebonne.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I just wanted to make
true.
sure that people are aware of that.
Yeah, I think we may have mentioned this last week, and this is just now the House Civil Law has finally scheduled these bills for hearing. I could be off base on that, and I don't have the list in front of me, but I do know that that Representative Domingue, my representative, voted against at least House Bill 48. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, 49 was pretty close to unanimous, which was because we talked about it. It was a head scratcher. We couldn't really get to an understanding about what would have led to that. But if it's illogical, it's hard. It's hard to get to the logic on it.
You suggested that it might have had something to do with the fact that they get paid for certain things and they don't get paid for other things.
Oh yeah, maybe they get paid by the day and not by the hour. That is a question mark I have. So if any legislators are listening and want to let us know if that's true, that would be a great data point for us. Okay, moving on to another bill that I honestly cannot recall if we have mentioned it before, but I am excited about this bill. It's House Bill 498 by Representative Jordan Edmond, and who is a Democrat, and he is bringing legislation to make sure that ammunition manufacturers do not face any liability should someone misuse a firearm or ammunition negligently, or anyway. Really, if they should misuse it, then the ammo manufacturer should not be held responsible. Chris, I recall that the firearms manufacturers are already not liable, and this is just adding to that. Is that right?
Absolutely. It's adding to that. The manufacturer of the firearms are already immune from liability and for misuse of a gun. And this simply adds to that immunity ammunition manufacturers as well. You know,
Yeah.
we have to return in our country to a situation where people are not treated like 3-year olds. We
Yeah.
have to return to a situation in our country where people are accountable for their own actions. And if someone is going to be trying to handle a gun with live ammunition and they misuse the gun and hurt somebody, that's not the responsibility of the gun manufacturer. That's not the responsibility of the company that manufactured the ammo. We're talking about a gun here, a gun
Yeah.
and ammo. If you're
Yeah.
not able to put together that this is a dangerous piece of equipment, then I'm sorry, but maybe you shouldn't be allowed to go out in public without supervision. I don't know what else to say about it, but I like the
Well, we know.
fact that, you know, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, yeah, the bullet didn't do it. The shell didn't do it. The person obviously did it. Whether it was through negligence or purposeful means, the person did it. Let's all get around the fact that the person has the finger that pulled the trigger, and that's what happened.
Amen. And do we hold a car manufacturer liable when someone is negligent in a vehicle and wrecks it and injures someone? No.
Right. No, no.
Same thing.
Okay. Agreed. Okay, there's a couple bills that are going to be on the House floor for debate and passage, hopeful passage on Monday, starting with HCR 68 by Representative Chuck Owen. And this resolution would basically direct the Board of Regents and post-secondary education management boards to take a look at who they're hiring and say, maybe you shouldn't be hiring communists from foreign adversaries. I don't think he put it in those exact terms, Chris, but you were there for the hearing.
And I testified very enthusiastically in favor of the resolution. Representative Owen did a wonderful job explaining the resolution. It's very, very simple. Scrutinize very thoroughly any citizen of any country that is on the United States State Department list of enemy countries of the United States. When citizens from those countries come here and want to be hired to teach in an institution of higher learning in Louisiana, scrutinize them thoroughly to know who they are, where they're from, what their motives are, and whether or not they have some ulterior motive or are in some manner conspiring with an enemy country to do harm to our country or to our students or to our educational institutions. It is a common sense resolution, and any country that doesn't do this under these circumstances, it's colossally stupid for not doing so. Chuck Owen spent much of his military career analyzing and studying the bad guys. And he made it very clear that there are countries out there who mean us harm, who want to hurt us. And if those governments control the citizens from those countries. Just because those citizens are here in this country applying for a job does not mean that their government is not controlling them just as much as they would be if they were in a school in their own country. Geography does not render that control any less severe. And so we've got to scrutinize and we've got to make sure we know who they are. And this resolution encourages just that. And it's a really, really good piece of legislation. I was very glad to be able to testify for it.
It is a great piece of legislation. And I'll just add to what you said, Chris, that Joseph McCarthy, the former Senator Joseph McCarthy, warned against this back in, I believe, the 50s, if not before then, at least in the 50s. And this is straight out of Saul Alinsky's playbook, where Marxists are it's the whole principle of infiltration, indoctrination through infiltration. That's what's happening. If anyone who's listening has a kid that they put in college and they felt like, hey, we're doing our best, we're putting our kid in college, and they come out crazy liberal, you never raised them like that. This is what happened. It's not necessarily that they were foreign adversaries who were indoctrinating your children, but some foreign element has definitely influenced the university system in a Marxist manner, and this is what's happening. So hats off to Representative Chuck Owen for seeing it for what it is, for calling a spade, and saying, guess what? We have enough communists in our country. Let's at least not let more in.
One last point on this, Danielle. James Lindsay gave a very satisfying and comprehensive explanation of what you just said about the infiltration of our institutions of higher education.
Yeah.
And so he also buttresses the need for this legislation.
Yeah. And if you missed that episode, by all means, go back and listen to it. I mean, it was just a stunner. What a fantastic interview. Dr. James Lindsay, I can't say enough about. So please check that one out. Okay, I'm going to maybe try and get off my soapbox for just a minute, but I can't promise anything, folks. Next up, House Bill 577 by Representative Carver. This one is stopping or prohibiting, rather, the social media companies from collecting data from minors so that they could target them with advertisements. And this passed House Commerce unanimously, and it is passed to a third reading. And for floor debate, it'll be heard on Monday.
Yeah, this is an absolute no-brainer. If there's any controversy about whether or not this gets through both houses, both chambers, and signed by the governor, I'll be very, very shocked by it. It prohibits advertising to minors on social media, and it prohibits the buying and selling of minors' data off of social media. It's a great bill to protect minors on social media, and obviously to make sure that their parents have an idea of what's going on there. This is very, very, it's important. It should be non-controversial. It'll be very interesting to see if any Republicans vote against this.
We shall see. I hope that no one sticks their neck up like that, because this, like you said, Chris, this is a no-brainer. Next up is House Bill 833 by Representative Paula Davis, and it was the legislation she brought about in vitro fertilization this past week. We opposed the bill, but it did pass. But our concern was amended. Chris, we were talking with Ben Clapper from Louisiana Right to Life. I'm sure you talked to several others, and he had been working closely with Representative Davis to get this in shape that they did not necessarily have to oppose, but that would maintain Louisiana's status as the most pro-life state in Louisiana, and the only pro-life state, or the only state in Louisiana, I believe, that protects the rights of embryos that are unimplanted.
Right, exactly. And the bottom line is this. Her original version of her legislation said that fertilized embryo has the potential to become a biological human being. And that would have changed the law, the current law, which says that a fertilized embryo is a biological human being, which it is. And there was no way we were going to support that legislation with that change in language. It has been amended, and that language has been amended out, and now we're back to a fertilized embryo is a biological human being. I still don't. I don't support this legislation because I have my doubts about the way in vitro fertilization is done. I don't even know if I believe in it from an ethical point of view. But the point is, our position on this bill went from opposed to neutral. So we don't support or oppose this legislation now that it's been amended to return the original language that establishes that an embryo is a human biological human being. So we're neutral on the bill at this point. I testified against it originally, but it's been amended. Ben Clapper was on top of this. Hats off to him, Louisiana Right to Life. So whatever happens with this, I'm no fan of Paula Davis. Everybody knows that, but there's enough to talk about bad stuff that Paula Davis has done. We don't have to talk about this bill.
Yeah. And I think, Chris, one of my big concerns about this legislation and basically any legislation around in vitro fertilization is that the idea is that the in vitro clinics are self-policing, and they are it in a way, like they're saying, okay, they are the ones to make the determination as to whether the embryo is viable or non-viable, right? And I don't know that there's an auditing process that backs that up. So that's what really concerns me, is that, okay, so does a fertilized embryo, a baby in a test tube, become non-viable when they run out of storage space? Does it become non-viable? Like, if they are in charge of monitoring themselves and self-reporting, it's a for-profit organization, and I just have a problem with that. So I would love to see if there would be some kind of way to bring in an auditing process to these laboratories, Chris, because I don't think that this is something that we can just trust, that the people who are set up and incentivized to make money off of maximizing the number of pregnancies are going to really be 100% of the time 100% forthright about how the babies in the test tubes that have not met their mommy's womb are being handled. So that's my big problem with it.
And I think that's so well said. And I think the natural tendency, if you're in the business to make a profit, is to make money and not necessarily to treat these biological human beings with the dignity and respect that they deserve, especially if you're self-policing. So I would agree with you about the need to have some kind of a periodic, meaningful auditing process. I agree with that, and that should probably be in this bill right now. But
Maybe we
that's a
should talk to Ben
conversation for
Clapper
another day.
about it. Yeah.
You know what? Maybe so. Maybe we should do
Yeah.
that. We need to make a note to see about talking to Ben Clapper about it. Look, that could still be done.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I made the note. Okay. Next up, House Bill 545, Representative Amade. You have heard about this bill before if you've listened to any of our previous episodes with legislation this session. This one is about creating the crime of obscenity in public school libraries for those filthy, filthy smut-filled books that are actually created for and targeted toward school children. It is set for floor debate on Monday.
Well, you know what? Representative Amade is the most courageous legislator in either chamber, in my humble estimation, after having witnessed and watched all of them. And they've got some very good legislators. She acts on principle. She brings things because it's the right thing to do, win, lose, or draw. She's always on top of her game, always prepared. Got enormous respect for her. And this bill basically will say Sorry, public school library, you don't get to hide behind the traditional, oh, we're an educational institution, so therefore we can peddle smut in our schools on the altar of an exchange of information and ideas, and you can't suppress our educational um, evolution or enlightenment in our library. You can't touch it because we're a library. No, not anymore. If this bill passes, there will be a criminal prosecution for public school libraries who peddle smut that's inappropriate for 8, 9, and 10-year-old kids. And it's high time that that exemption be removed.
Yeah, it is. It is. So looking forward to that one, and just a alert that this one is going to be on our scorecard, and we will be letting our legislators know in the House that the way they vote will be noted. So they can look forward to that. Last up for Monday, House Bill 162 by Representative Boyu will be heard on the Senate floor. This one, Chris, is about itemizing spending in the state.
Absolutely, and I love the fact that Representative Boyer's legislation, HB 162, will require individualized, itemized appropriations for any expenditure of taxpayer money. I think it's just a tremendous. No more throwing $6, $8, $10 million at a parish or in a district and saying, "Hey, this is for you for your infrastructure projects or whatever it is." No, it has. We have a right. Taxpayers have a right to know specifically and individually what our taxpayer money is going to, and that's what this legislation would do. It would require an individualized appropriation and legislative approval for each of those individual appropriations before any money can be expended. And I can't think from a fiscal point of view, I can't think of anything that is more important than this, both for purposes of transparency and in order to facilitate greater awareness by our own legislators of where this money's going.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said, Chris. Now we have made our way to Tuesday, and there is a bill up in House Health and Welfare that you probably have all heard before. Chris has testified in support of this. It is by Senator Jackson, Senate Bill 278, and it is Louisiana Pregnancy and Baby Care Initiative. It was supposed to be heard last week, so we did mention it on the show last week, but it just got rescheduled for this week. So we remain in strong support of this, in strong support of taking care of vulnerable moms and babies.
And I could not have said it any better myself. I'll just add that Senator Jackson Andrews is a very pro-life Democrat. Don't let anybody ever tell you that just because you're a Democrat, you can't be pro-life, because she's about as pro-life as you come.
That's right. She says where does she say, from the womb to the grave, she's pro-life. So yeah, appreciate her. Okay, next up in Senate Agriculture, this is Tuesday, folks. This one is one that we have been following, and it is making good progress. It's House Bill 238 by Representative Michael Echols, and it is protecting our agricultural land from foreign adversaries. This is also a vote that we are going to be taking very, very close note of.
Yeah, I'll never forget the very impassioned defense of this bill that Representative Chuck Owen gave during the veto override session last year. It did not survive the veto override session, very, very sadly. However, this is one of those bills that's just a no-brainer. China should not be buying agricultural property in Louisiana. It's that simple. My God, why would every legislator in both chambers in our state not be immediately voting for this? Especially when you consider the extent to which that country and others are trying to dismantle and eviscerate our critical infrastructure. And one of the ways in which they would love to do it would be to buy up immovable agricultural property within the interior of our state. And if people don't think they're trying to do that, wake up, get your head out from under a rock, and understand what's really going on. Every single legislator, Republican and Democrat, should be voting for this legislation. There should be zero controversy about it.
Yeah. And I expect everyone to be present and accounted for. And if they're not, we're going to mention it next week. Per
You
usual.
better believe it. You better believe
That's
it.
right.
You know, even though I've developed a little bit better relationship with Senator Connick this session, I think he's done a couple of good things this session. You know, I will remind you that Senator Connick either voted against or was not present in the Senate when this during the veto override session when this vote was taken to override the governor's veto of this legislation.
But maybe he's had a change of heart.
Maybe he's had a change of heart, and Senator Connick, you know, and Senator Connick will understands that we will be, you know, very very respectfully reminding him to make sure that he's there for these votes.
Yep. Okay, well, let's get moving on. What's going to happen at House Criminal Justice this week, Chris? This is also Tuesday. Like I said, folks, Tuesday is a huge, huge day. If any of these bills strike a nerve with you, impassion you, do your best to get to the Capitol and let your voice be heard, either with red cards, green cards, or testifying. Okay, in the House Criminal Justice Committee, there are so many bills that are important. 5 of them, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are trying to make abortion easier, trying to weaken the pro-life laws in the state of Louisiana. I will just rattle them off so you know what they are, but Chris will give you a quick recap. They are House Bill 56 and 63 by Representative Newell, House Bill 164 by Representative Delisha Boyd, House Bill 293 by Representative Amy Freeman, and House Bill 630 by Representative Mandy Landry.
Every one of these bills, well, the first 4 that you named, Danielle, all either redefine abortion in Louisiana or create exceptions to our law in abortion that would allow abortions. So the first 4 clearly weaken our pro-life laws in Louisiana and should be absolutely defeated. And the last one that you named, that was 650, right?
630.
630. The last one that you named would prohibit the criminal prosecution of a mother who chooses abortion. Well, as tragic as that is, and as wrong as that is, as a matter of public policy in Louisiana, we don't criminally prosecute mothers who have had abortions. And 99% of them spend the rest of their lives crucifying themselves in a state of shame and guilt for the rest of their lives. We don't criminally prosecute mothers who've had abortions in Louisiana. We don't need a bill that prohibits the criminal prosecution of mothers. So I don't even know why this bill is necessary, you know, in the state, but we don't need it. And so we're obviously going to oppose it. And the other 4, as I said, either redefine or weaken our anti-abortion laws in Louisiana. It's like they bring basically the same bills every year, and it's always the same authors. It's always, why are they so fixated on destroying human life? I don't understand that. There's got to be an element of what is that, Danielle? Why are they so fixated on destroying human life instead of trying to protect human life and see to it that we take care of unborn children, both during the pregnancy and then after they're born? I don't understand these people.
Chris, all I can say is they have to be deceived, right? I mean, obviously, if a woman becomes pregnant and is not happy about being pregnant, the child is actually not the problem. You know, the child, as Debbie Melvin told me over the phone this week, the child is always a blessing. And I agree with that. Absolutely. So if there's another problem that you have that makes you unhappy with your pregnancy, maybe deal with that problem. Don't punish an unborn child who can't speak for themselves, who can't defend themselves. We will, Chris. I know you will be there. I know Debbie Melvin will be there, and many others besides, to stand for the cause of life in the state of Louisiana. We do have a call to action. Because all of these bills are horrible, we just put them in one call to action, especially since they're all going to the House Criminal Justice Committee. So you can take one action and make your voice heard on all 5 of these atrocious bills.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah, and I'm just very, very thankful for Debbie Melvin. I cannot say enough great about that lady.
I
She
know.
has so much conviction, so much principle. She's got such a big heart for the unborn. And it's just a privilege to be fighting for the unborn with people like her. She gives me inspiration and courage. And I'm looking forward to working with her to get these bills summarily dispatched.
Yeah. I am looking forward to not seeing these come back on the list and not have to further defend that this session. I'd like for us to just get them all killed in one day, and that would be great.
Get it
Maybe
done.
we should, yeah, have our campaign will be kill the bill, not the babies. How about that?
Kill the bill, not the babies. Amen.
Yep.
Golly, I love that.
You're welcome. No extra charge, Chris. Okay, let's get through
You
the rest of
charge me
these.
enough.
So,
You already charge enough. Thank God.
true. My rate is pretty high. Okay,
Yeah.
House Bill 408, also by Representative Mandy Landry. This is the smartest bill this session, as we all know. Her voluntary do not sell bill, where people who are in some kind of mental distress can report themselves to the government and request that the government not let anyone sell them a gun. So I'm not really sure how she's going to defend this bill, Chris. I look forward to you being there in person to be able to see that. I think this is what I'm going to have to absolutely watch on the stream because it just blows the mind. I don't understand it. But I don't know. Is there anything you want to say about Mandy Landry's bill?
I just want to say that I hope that you will make sure that I testify on this because I think it will be an interesting exchange. And, I just cannot wait until all of the mentally challenged people, the emotionally unstable people line up to turn in their guns and go on the government watch list on a strictly voluntary basis, of course. And then whenever they find that they have reestablished their stability and are once again solid functioning citizens, they can do you realize, Danielle, all
Yeah.
they have to do is go and request that they be removed from the list, and the government
Yeah.
has to remove them immediately. You know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I bet
Yeah.
they do get removed from that list, Chris. Yeah.
Oh, very, very quickly. In fact, I think that they still I think when they go and request to be taken off the list, I think they have to. I think we need an amendment that they just should go ahead and have to just give them their guns back right then.
Well, that's true. We'll see if she's open to that. Why don't you just ask her when you testify?
Oh,
Okay.
absolutely.
Mandy Landry's bringing another bill that is also about gun rights, I guess you could say, House Bill 627, and she doesn't want you to be able to concealed carry a gun at a parade or at a protest or 1,000 feet from a parade or a protest.
Yeah,
That's
very,
that's
very
basically it.
interesting. And as I told you before, Danielle, thugs with guns, with illegal guns, that they're walking around with, they, for some reason, as I've told you before, they don't ever commit acts of violence at parades or within 1,000 feet of parades. For some reason, they just stay away from that area always. So I can understand why law-abiding citizens would be prohibited from the capacity to defend themselves with their guns at a parade or within 1,000 feet of a parade. This is just
Yeah.
classic, airtight, leftist woke logic. I love it.
All right. Well, we can move on to some legislation that we are supporting in this committee. There are 2 bills that we greatly support. The first one is Senate Bill 276 by Senator Presley, and this is the bill he brought in protection of women who face similar circumstances to his sister, and that is creating the crime of coerced abortion by fraud. It's passed through the Senate, and we don't expect it to face any difficulty in the House either. This seems to be a bill that people should be able to get behind without too much extra help, right?
100%. Very excited about it. And, anybody who does this, any guy who secretly tries to induce an abortion in his spouse or girlfriend is truly sick. It's just impossible for me to comprehend it. I agree with you, Danielle. I can't imagine how this bill would not fly through.
Yeah. And another bill that should absolutely fly through is the last one we'll mention for that committee, and it's Senate Bill 306 by Senator Kathy. He is bringing a bill that will increase the penalty for human trafficking of victims who are minors. So, also a no-brainer, Chris. Good grief. It's a
Yeah.
tragedy any way you look at it, and these people deserve maximum penalty, maximum pain. That's as far as I
And
can say.
that's what they will get under Senator Stewart Cathy's bill. And I agree, it should go through with no controversy.
Great. Okay, next up, House and Governmental Affairs. We're still on Tuesday, just a couple bills left for Tuesday, and it is Senate Bill 101 by Senator Miguez, and it is to prohibit ranked choice voting.
We've talked about ranked choice voting, Danielle. There's so many problems with it. It is so cumbersome. It takes so long to tally the votes, but most importantly, it requires people to vote for candidates that they don't want to vote for. The right to vote is a fundamental right, and it is an exercise of speech under the First Amendment. And the government cannot coerce us to engage in speech that we don't want to engage in. And that includes the right to vote or not vote for who we don't want to vote for. So when you're going in a list and you're listing your first candidate, your second candidate, you've got to rank these candidates. So what if you don't like someone that you have to rank and check that you would vote for? This is just there's such a huge problem with ranked choice voting. I believe in one man, in one person, one vote, and that's the way it should be. And ranked choice voting has no place in Louisiana. And I hope that this passes. And I'm sure that there will be people voting against it. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of Democrats voting against it, but there's no reason why this shouldn't pass in both chambers with the Republican majorities that we have.
It should, and we'll be counting. We'll be counting your names and your numbers. Don't worry about that. Okay, next up, probably one of the biggest bills of the session. You said you would claim it's one of the biggest bills in the last 10 years, and I don't know if I could disagree with you there, Chris. It's Senate Bill 133 by Senator Presley, and this one is the bill that would say no to the WHO, to the UN, to the WEF, and any other organization that wants to assert its authority or its will on the people, the good people of the state of Louisiana, who have never, ever consented to be governed by those people.
Absolutely. This is a great assertion of state sovereignty against international tyranny and indirectly against national tyranny. And so I'm very, very thankful for Thomas Presley for bringing this bill. We will shield ourselves from the WHO, the UN, from any health protocols that they decide to impose or try to impose on us. It prohibits us from implementing any of those in our state. And it is such an important bill. We've had a number of national guests who've come on who have really lauded us for the passage of this legislation. It's not done yet. Still got to get through the House and signed by the governor. But hats off to Senator Thomas Presley. I would agree with you, Danielle, that this is probably the most important single piece of legislation of the session.
Very excited to see this through. And we heard from Senator Presley that he believes that he has a strong chance to get it through. And so, look, the bill is up on the Action Center. Go take action. Make sure by all means that the House and Governmental Affairs Committee knows where you stand on this, that you don't want the WHO in your business and you expect them to back you up. Okay.
So important. So important.
It is. It's so important. The next bill is one that was supposed to be heard in House Transportation last week. and it got moved to House Insurance Committee this week. And it is House Bill 957 by Democrat Representative Edmund Jordan. And it is the one that protects drivers' privacy. So when drivers go to their dealership to get the car serviced, they do not have to have the information transmitted to insurance companies without their knowledge. They don't have to have it transmitted to used car sales outlets without their knowledge. They get to choose under this bill, Chris, was that right? They get to choose if that information goes and if it does not go.
That's exactly right. And they have to specifically authorize that information. I can't remember the term, Danielle, that Jordan calls
telematic
this.
Data.
Yeah, it's called telematic data. And this is data that is deeply embedded into the computer infrastructure in the vehicle that registers how fast you accelerate, or whether you have to brake suddenly, or whether you have to make a sudden turn, or whatever it is that could be some indicia of recklessness, or some indicia that you're perhaps an irresponsible driver. And when that information is transmitted from your dealership to an insurance company or to other regulatory agencies, it affects your insurance rates. And plus it's a violation of your privacy. You haven't been involved in an accident. You haven't been caught speeding or anything like that. You haven't done anything wrong that's provably wrong, yet they're going to get this data, transmit it to an insurance company or to a regulatory agency, and cause you to have your insurance rates potentially go up. And plus, as you said, Danielle, it is a fundamental breach of your privacy to begin with. So this is something that you should have to specifically authorize, and that's what this bill would do.
Yep. And set for House floor debate on Tuesday is House Bill 866 by Representative Amade. And this is her anti-discrimination bill that says that you can make whatever medical choices you want, and no one in any position can do anything to discriminate against you, basically. That's my paraphrase. Chris, you can say it better.
Yeah, and my paraphrase is no entity, no agency in the state of Louisiana can discriminate against any citizen in any way at any time simply because they refuse any medical protocol, any medical procedure, any vaccine, anything health related. It is broad-based. That's why I call it Representative Amade's omnibus anti-vaccine bill when it comes to healthcare. Nobody can be discriminated against for any choice that they make regarding their own personal medical care. And it's a good bill, and it should be passed on the House floor. And I'm very eager to see which Republicans vote against it.
Yeah, well, I hope not to see any of them, but we will know if they do. Okay, folks, Wednesday is basically the last day that we're taking a look at right now, because that's the last day that we have scheduled information for. First up on Wednesday is Senate Bill 208 by Senator Miguez, and this is his sanctuary city policy. Great bill. We've been waiting for it to hit the House, and now's the time.
And Louisiana, under his bill, Danielle, very briefly, Louisiana will never become a sanctuary state and never, ever allow law enforcement or any law enforcement agencies throughout the state to engage in a customary practice of sanctuary policy in the state of Louisiana. We're not a sanctuary policy. We believe in federal immigration law, and we're not going to be a state that houses and harbors and protects illegal immigrants from the consequences of being in this country illegally. Our state is going to enforce the law consistently and across the board, and we are not going to become a state that provides harbor and refuge for illegal aliens. That's what the bill does in a nutshell. It's a good piece of legislation by a good state senator, and it needs to pass.
Yes, and that's a good state senator who stands for the Second Amendment. And we are moving on to a state senator who is not doing much to protect the Second Amendment in the state of Louisiana. In fact, he is trying to erode the Second Amendment absolutely and create a two-tiered system of, I guess you could say, of justice, but it's really a two-tiered society of concealed carriers, those who have a permit and those who don't. This is Senator Talbot's stinky bill, Senate Bill 419, and he wants to basically, Chris, outlaw carrying a concealed, any kind of gun in the French Quarter or many other places in the state of Louisiana that he has on his little tick list.
Yeah, in any sports events, grade school sports events, high school sports events, college sports events, professional sports events. It's like you can't go to a sporting event anywhere in the state of Louisiana with your concealed carry. And then in anywhere, whether you have a concealed carry permit or not, or whether you're a permitless constitutional concealed carrier, you just can't do it in any of those places. And in the French, now he does make an exception in the French Quarter. In the French Quarter, you can do it if you have a concealed carry permit. But permitless concealed carriers, good luck in the French Quarter. You don't get to carry, even though we just passed constitutional carry SB 1. It's amazing. We just passed Senate Bill 1, and we're celebrating constitutional carry in the state of Louisiana. And that, by definition, means you don't have to get a government-issued permit. We're celebrating the codification of that fundamental Second Amendment right. And immediately, we have a Republican senator who's coming in and trying to eviscerate the right. I have to tell you, this really surprises me that this is Senator Kirk Talbot bringing this legislation. He's normally a very good legislator. I think he's very thoughtful. I don't know why he's bringing this. I mean, if this was an Alonzo Knox bringing this, or a Mandy Phelps, whatever her name is, bringing this, maybe I butchered the name, got the first, last, but less. Either way, if it was one of them, I'd be less surprised. But this is Kirk Talbot basically saying that in sporting events across the state, you don't get to conceal carry, even though it's a fundamental Second Amendment right now. I just don't understand it. I hope this is defeated, and it really needs to be.
Chris, I will correct you on one point, which is we haven't finished celebrating because we haven't even had the opportunity to enjoy the liberty of concealed carry because it has not been enacted yet. I believe the governor has signed it, but if I'm not mistaken, it's not even going into force until July 4th of this year. So he would gut the bill before we even have the codified right, even though you and I would both agree that we do have the right under the Constitution of the United States of America, which a lot of our legislators would not recognize if they saw it. Okay.
Exactly. But listen, I do want to say this. You're exactly right. So it has not gone into effect yet, but we certainly are, permitless carriers across Louisiana are certainly celebrating the passage of the act. Yeah.
Yeah. So this one is definitely on our action center. Please go and let everyone in Senate, local, and municipal affairs, one of my top 2 favorite committees, know that this bill is wrong. Okay, next, a couple bills that y'all have heard before just recently. They are House Bill 492 and 966 by Representative Guyman. They're going to Senate Natural Resources Committee, and they are related to carbon capture.
Yeah, and we're very, very, I love Brett Guyman. These are good bills. Eminent domain bill and the unitization bills together will really help landowners have some real leverage and some real rights with regard to the expropriation of their property for this carbon capture sequestration. It will require 75% of the affected landowners to approve of the contract, approve of the use of the land. And if they don't get 75%, then they don't get to expropriate the property for carbon capture sequestration. And I wanted to also mention that Danny McCormick, I believe, has a bill that we have not followed because we just learned about it very, very recently that would require, if they get the 75%, but there are 25% who don't agree, that those 25% would get maximum value for their property if it's expropriated.
Yeah. Gotta love Representative Danny McCormick. He's always bringing common sense legislation that helps the people. Okay.
100%.
Last up is a bill that will be heard on Wednesday for final floor debate in the House. It's Senate Bill 152 by Senator Blake Miguez, and this one is a language cleanup of SB 2, if you remember it from the criminal session, which gives civil liability protection to only permitted concealed carriers. And we see a real opportunity here for an amendment. And Chris, I know you've had some conversations about this on our behalf.
Yeah, I had a lengthy conversation a couple of days ago with Governor Landry, two of Governor Landry's policy directors. I explained very clearly that Senator Miguez should use this as an opportunity to amend SB 2 to make sure that permitless carriers get the same level of liability protection that permitted carriers have. If constitutional carry permitless is a fundamental constitutional right in Louisiana, which it is, and which SB 1 just demonstrated that it is, they should not have less liability protection than permitted carriers if they have to use their gun. It makes absolutely no sense. So we've offered a compromise in the bill that hopefully will allow this to be amended to make sure that permitless carriers are not walking around more vulnerable if they have to use their gun than permitted carriers. It really incenses me on some level that would be the case.
Well, I'm very hopeful that gets taken up. It will definitely show that they truly support the Second Amendment. It will definitely show that they truly support concealed carriers in the state of Louisiana. And we'll see, because it's coming up on Wednesday. So we will let you guys know what the final take on that is. But that is a wrap, folks, if you can believe it. I know we moved so quick today getting through all those bills, but I think a lot of these bills you've heard of before. We've made significant leaps forward. I think we're probably not going to be seeing too many more new bills. I think we've probably hit that point in session where almost everything's been seen. I think we're expecting a few bills we know about to come onto the scene that we haven't talked about yet or haven't made it to committee yet. But for the most part, I expect and pray that we don't see too many more new bills and these start making their way. We'll start seeing some final passage this week. So excited about that. And Chris, I don't know, do you have anything else that you want to mention about this upcoming week?
Well, I know that I'm going to be down there testifying on a number of bills. I'm very excited about being down there. I love expressing the views of citizens across the state. I love getting feedback from citizens. I absolutely love the opportunity to vindicate the voice of ordinary citizens. And I know that you and I together and others have brought a lot of hope to people. And I love it when they reach out and say, Chris, you really fought hard for us on that legislation. And I really, really appreciate it. I can't tell you how satisfying that is. And I'm coming to a point now, Danielle, where I really do enjoy being there. It has been a real adjustment to be down at the legislature, because when you're down there and you see all these people who seem to be principally focused on their own self-enrichment, and you're there trying to truly help advance the interest of Louisiana citizens, there have been times when it's disillusioning, but I really look upon it now as an opportunity to find the good. And there's always good if you look for it. No matter where you are and whatever the situation is, there's always good to be found if you just look for it. It's there because we're all made in the image and likeness of God, and therefore we all have goodness in us. We just have to find it. And many of the people there want to do the right thing. They just need people surrounding them and supporting them to do the right thing. I have found that.
Yeah. Well, Chris, I think, you're such a fighter and you have been down there doing such hard work for us on behalf of the people of the state of Louisiana. And there are definitely legislators who are not respectful and who don't appreciate an alternative viewpoint, don't appreciate the voice of the people, because for whatever reason, I'm not going to assign a reason, but you just do. You stay positive. You're so respectful to them, and you do us a great service by doing that. So thank you. I really appreciate you. I know our listeners would join me in my thanks to you for that. And, I appreciate your perspective as well. I'm so glad that you're enjoying being there, and you're finding the positive in a lot of it, because everybody is a work in progress. And look, we've seen a lot of these legislators kind of change over time. I mean, it's surprising to find some of the people that we are finding common footing with, and common ground with, that just, if you would have told me at the beginning of session that we were fighting alongside some of these folks, I would have said, you have got to be out of your mind. But here we are, and I'm so proud of them, and I'm so proud of the work that we have done. So proud of our listeners for taking action and making their voice heard, because it's giving people courage. Your voice is giving people courage.
It absolutely is. And I'm so thankful for all of the supporters of the State of Freedom. Danielle, I am telling you that it is absolutely achievable for us, this show, to become the voice of constitutional conservatism all across the state of Louisiana. And we are growing and we are building and we are continue to establish our credibility. And it will happen. And I'm so thankful for all the people who are helping us to expand our reach across Louisiana. I'm just thrilled to death that that is where we are headed. There's no doubt that it's going to happen. It's just a matter of time, because there is no, and I say this with all humility, I don't think that there are any two people in the media business who work harder than you and I work, who are more dedicated to our work, and who want more to get it right than we do, and who want more to be loyal and to serve the state of Louisiana and make a difference than we do. There's just no doubt about it. And there's nobody who's got any more passionate desire to serve than us. So we're going to get there. There's no question about it. And I'm just thankful for the people that are already on board and the many who will be very soon. And it's rapidly growing each day. So continue to support the State of Freedom. And of course, continue to support LACAG, because we're the German shepherds in the legislature. And we are evening the playing field down there. Danielle, every legislator in that place has at least 3 or 4 or 5 lobbyists from big special interest groups that are always bending their ear. And the only thing that frightens those legislators more than going against these big special interest lobbyists, it's going against the vast majority of citizens and voters in their district, when they know that at some point in time, their citizens and their voters are going to know exactly what they did. And that's what we, LACAG, bring to the table.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so proud of us. And Chris, we get to have so much fun. I mean, this is definitely a calling, but it is something that we have really grown in and we have come to enjoy. So big thank you to our listeners for giving us the opportunity to do this. We have a lot of debate behind the scenes. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And we're just so proud to have the opportunity to represent you.
And I am so thankful, Danielle, to all of our LACAG supporters. If you want to make a donation to LACAG, LACAG.org, you can join. $22 a month, $33 a month, or whatever you want to do. Beyond that, you want to do a one-time donation, you can either do it online or you can mail it to P.O. Box 64952, Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 70896. Please know that we are fighting for you and winning for you, the citizens in the state legislature. We have 3 loyalties, actually. God, the United States Constitution and the citizens of the state of Louisiana, and that is it. So help us to keep fighting for you by supporting LACAG.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Danielle, you know what? If people continue to support us, continue to pray for us, continue to lift us up, each and every day, we will take another grand step to preserve the great state of freedom in the great state of Louisiana.
Yep. And it's getting better and better. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to The State of Freedom. To stay on top of all the calls to action we mentioned today, just check out the show notes for the episode. If you'd like to support the show financially, visit our website at freedomstate.us. If you'd prefer to give by mail, you can send a check to The State of Freedom, LLC at P.O. Box 861, Berg, Louisiana 70343. If you own a business in Louisiana and are interested in supporting our show by advertising, please email us at info@freedomstate.us. To get involved with Louisiana Citizen Advocacy Group, visit lacag.org, LACAG.org, or email Chris at chris@lacag.org. If you're enjoying the podcast, please subscribe and share it. Give us a 5-star rating in the reviews. Thanks again, everybody. We'll see you next time.